Hello, and welcome to the new podcast, I Watched It With My Wife. I'm Jeremy, and I'm here with my wife, Sarah.
Hello!
And this is a podcast we decided to launch because of our differing tastes in movies, and a lot of it based on, I like to watch a lot of movies. Sarah doesn't watch a lot of movies. But
Nope, I definitely don't have the attention span, but I'm gonna try.
But we wanted to spend more time together, and a lot of times, especially during this pandemic, there hasn't been a lot you can do. So we're sitting down, and in this podcast, we're going to watch movies, review them, critique them. Because I watch more than she does, I'm going to be picking the majority of the movies, but she will be picking some too that I may have never seen or have only seen once, and we will be watching those as well.
And we have a few rules for movie time. Like, I can't be doing other things when I'm watching the movie, which is normally what I do. With the TV on, I'll be scrolling through Facebook or on the computer or something like that. Maybe doing housework. So the only thing other than watching the movie that we're allowed to do is have our favorite beverage or a beverage of choice and some popcorn.
All right.
Or a snack.
Yes. And so, without further ado, our first film that we have decided to review is Dr. No, the very first James Bond movie from way back in 1962. Now, it's ironic timing because we chose this film for our first one about a week ago when we were getting ready to set this up. And now we're recording the day after Halloween on November 1st, and it's the day after the passing of Sean Connery, the actor who played James Bond in this film.
Which is definitely pretty sad and kind of unique timing. We do want to take a moment to give our condolences to Mr. Connery's friends and family and fans, of course. He was definitely a legendary actor. So I think that it's important to say that. So I've never seen Dr. No before, but I have seen other James Bond movies. I've seen Casino Royale, Spectre, and Skyfall. Right?
I know you've seen Spectre and Skyfall. We went to the theaters together to see those two.
Casino Royale too.
You've told me you've seen Casino Royale, and I believe you told me you also saw Die Another Day with Pierce Brosnan.
I think so. I don't remember though.
On the flip side of that, the James Bond series is one of my favorite series of movies. I have seen every film in the series at least twice. Some more than that if I really like them. Some I probably will not watch again unless Sarah requests them for this this podcast, because there are some bad, like really bad Bond movies. There's some really good ones, but there's some really bad ones.
And there's definitely a lot of iconic Bond pop culture references. We have seen them throughout various other TV shows. There was a kid show that Jeremy had mentioned that our son used to watch on Disney. I think it was Disney Junior. Special Agent Oso. That was basically a Bond kind of, not really spoof, but like based off a James Bond type thing. And there's so many pop culture references from this that, any Bond film would be iconic in that sense, I think. But again, I haven't seen all of them. And so this was my first time ever watching Dr. No.
And what are your first impressions of Dr. No?
So, all right. Well, the thing is, it was filmed in the 60s, and things that were allowed to be things in the 60s are not allowed today. The first thing is that the fast talking, all right, that's more of a personal thing with me, not so much a, time period or a cultural thing with me. But the fast talking I noticed, I feel like in movies today, people talk a little slower. You noticed that too, right?
I noticed that too, and you could tell that it was the dubbing from the time frame. Most of the actors' lines were dubbed. I think only Sean Connery and Jack Lord's voices were the ones actually used for their characters. Sean Connery as James Bond, Jack Lord as Felix Lyder, the American CIA agent in the film. Almost everyone else's voices was dubbed over by someone else.
Yes. So there was that. I have to say, in one of the first, it was like the third scene or something like that, the lady in the red dress, I thought she might have been French, but the actress's voice was German. That dubbed over, but I liked her, the lady playing cards in the red dress, Sylvia Trench. Yes, that's it.
She's definitely established as a no-nonsense woman in films.
Loved that character.
In films like this, too many times the women are either damsels in distress or they're working with the villains. She has no connection to either. You can tell she is not a damsel, but she has no connection to Dr. No, the main villain of the film.
Yeah. The other big thing that I had, so there were a couple things. In the beginning, one of the first scenes, there was a shooting, and I feel like for a gunshot, there just wasn't enough blood for a woman to be shot in the chest. You maybe had like a 3-inch diameter blood stain, and that's not how, maybe I'm being too technical, but that's not, realistic in that sense. So maybe, I know going forward, do they get more realistic with shootings? That sounds terrible.
Bond films might get more realistic with shootings, but
I mean, like,
so many characters in Bond films die in the most absurd ways that complaining about a lack of realism in shootings
seems
kind of off kilter.
I know, but again, this is also me who's watched, I prefer, I like to watch a lot of hospital TV shows. That's my background. So, or that's what I watch on TV. So that's, I don't know, it just wasn't realistic in that sense. It was like, it was kind of like cheesy in that fashion for me. That was the other big thing that kind of bothered me a little bit. And then there are some other things that the Asians, the fact that they were in Jamaica, so this movie takes place in Kingston, which we all know is in Jamaica, and it bothered me that they had non-Asians playing Asians and lots of Asian characters in Jamaica, which is kind of, and not so many Jamaican characters. So just like geographically, I guess is what I'm looking for. Culturally and geographically, it didn't make sense in that aspect to me as well. I had questions. But I think, again, like Jeremy said, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that this movie was made in 1962 and people didn't pay as much attention to that, or maybe society just wasn't as cultured as they are today to know that, like,
we weren't as culturally
aware.
Sensitive, aware, responsible. A great example, Dr. No. They do establish that Dr. No is a Chinese man. When you finally see Dr. No in the final 20 minutes of the film, that is the whitest Chinese man I have ever seen.
Yeah,
he's played by Joseph Wiseman, who is a Canadian actor. A perfectly fine actor, did well playing the villainous role, but there was no reason to establish him as Chinese with a white guy playing him. They could have literally just said that, left it completely ambiguous. His name is Dr. No, and everything would have been fine.
Or hired a Chinese actor to play that role. That was kind of like a big thing with me, as like culturally and stuff.
One other scene that was a little bothersome to me in retrospect is the Quarrel fetch my shoes line from that Connery delivers. Now, it was what was expected in the 60s of the man in charge telling his servant to fetch his shoes, but it does seem kind of awkward. A white guy just telling a black man, go fetch my shoes. It's not exactly it's not something you would see in later Bond films with the people working under Bond. He treats them more closely resembling equals than he did with Quarrel in this film. That being said, he still treated Quirrell a lot better than a lot of other people in the 60s movies treated black men who play servants. So it's better than some, but it's something we've come a long way to get beyond that.
Yeah, I don't really remember that specific scene in the movie.
It's on Crab Key when they're trying to get away from the guys who are trying to shoot them down before they unveil the dragon, which is literally
okay, all right. I do remember this scene a bit. I don't remember the specific line. I don't know. Yeah, so I definitely missed that. Guess I have to watch it again.
But beyond that, Dr. No does introduce some of the most iconic pop cultural references associated with James Bond. The very first line Sean Connery says is the Bond, James Bond.
Yes.
That we know from pretty much every single Bond film. Also introduced in this film, that he's referenced as Major Boothroyd here, who gives Bond his new gun. Major Boothroyd is the character name of Q through most of the Bond films. Now, I don't even know the actor who plays Major Boothroyd in here. He doesn't do much in this film other than present the gun. But, that is an iconic character once he becomes known as Q, played by Desmond Llewellyn, who has presented the gadgets that we have come accustomed to Bond using. In this film, not a lot of gadgets, just pretty much the gun. It's more Bond doing things with his skill than with whatever Q provides for him.
Yeah.
Also, you see the flirtatious relationship between Bond and Moneypenny. It is one that we are accustomed to. Every time there's a scene in the office, Bond flirts with Moneypenny, Moneypenny flirts with Bond. They never see each other outside of the office.
That we know of.
I am 100% certain that they don't see each other outside of the office.
Because you've watched more Bond movies than me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm going to say, based on what I saw off of this scene, that we know of.
And then also they introduced the Walther PPK, the gun that Bond is most known for in this movie. We see it a lot. One of the most famous lines from one of my favorite Bond movies in GoldenEye is when Robbie Coltrane, in his Russian accent, it's like a Walther PPK, 7.65 millimeter. I believe 3 men in the world carry this type of weapon. I believe I have killed 2. It is, it's something that stands out. The gun is memorable. The characters are memorable. The lines are memorable. You see the first vodka martini, shaken not stirred, even though I don't believe that Bond actually requests shaken not stirred. I think he just says not stirred in this film. But you see a lot of things, and there's the introduction of Felix Lyder in this film, played by Jack Lord. Felix is the American counterpart to Bond. He shows up on a lot of missions. There have been some great actors to play the character of Felix, and there have been some terrible actors to play the character of Felix. Felix changes more than Bond does, and Bond has had 6 different actors play him in this series. Now, of the actors who played Felix, I think that Jack Lord did the second best job. He did a great job in establishing the character, and it took one other guy. Only one other guy has been able to surpass that. So this is kind of the blueprint for what Felix should be. And then beyond all of that, it's the movie that started it all. We're about to have the 25th Bond movie hit theaters, hopefully in spring 2021. Who knows with what's going on.
Hopefully we'll be able to go see it.
Yes, hopefully we'll be able to go see it. Sarah and I have gone and see the last 2 Bond movies together. I have seen Bond movies from Tomorrow Never Dies through Spectre in theaters, whether I've gone with my brothers, with Sarah, by myself, because I wanted to see that movie in theaters. Nobody else was available when I was, so I went.
I've been to the movies by myself before, and I have to say, I actually kind of like it better than going with other people because I get all the popcorn to myself. And The nachos.
And
I love nachos.
now yes. But beyond Sarah's love of food, now this is the movie that started it all. This is the introduction of Sean Connery's role. Now, Sean Connery played this role off and on for 21 years, between 1962 and 1983. He played it in 5 movies in a row between Dr. No and You Only Live Twice. Then he took a movie off and then came back for Diamonds Are Forever. And then he returned to the role in a different production company back in 1983 for the movie Never Say Never Again. Now, that is not considered one of the canonical Bond films, but it is Sean Connery in the role of James Bond. Everything about this is James Bond, except for the fact that it doesn't have the typical gun barrel scene that you're used to in James Bond movies, and Sean Connery was honestly too old to be playing the character in 1983. No offense, he is a great actor, but it did not work because of his age.
Yeah, James Bond kind of has to be a younger guy. I haven't seen that movie, but I know, like, James Bond, the character, has to be young and healthy and athletic and to be able to do the things that he does.
All right, so now for these reviews, we are going to be ranking them on a scale of 1 to 10. So I'm going to toss it over to Sarah here. And what is your ranking of Dr. No?
I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 because the acting by Sean Connery was excellent. There was no concerns there. A lot of the acting, I didn't have any problems with the acting. The script was fine. It was more the like the production issues, as far as, like, again, not casting Asians for Asian roles, having, non-Jamaican characters, or, having characters that just the cultural stuff in it that kind of irked me a little bit. So I have to give it, but the movie itself was really good. So also at that time that was acceptable. And that's the other thing I have to go by too, is I have to go by the standard of what was acceptable at that time versus what's acceptable now, because we can't just cancel things that, we can't just stop liking things because at one time it was okay to do something that is no longer okay. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. That's right. But also the franchise, it sets up the movie for the entire franchise. It sets up pop culture references, and it is iconic.
So your problem seems to be a product of its time.
Yeah, probably. Even the ashtrays bothered me. There were ashtrays in, like, every scene, and smoking, and that bothered me too. Because I think smoking is gross, but whole other story.
So I guess my question is, if they remade this movie, because they reboot movies, they remake them all the time. If they remade this, they would obviously take a lot of those things into account. There would be far fewer ashtrays. It would be, if they're going to make Dr. No Chinese, it would be played by a Chinese man. Do you think it could be improved? It would be improved.
I think if they no, I don't think they should remake it.
I'm not saying they should. I'm saying if they did, would it be better or worse?
Oh, geez, now you got me in a spot. I don't really think they should remake it. I think remaking it is a terrible idea in a sense that story progression has happened, and I think that that's actually a good thing, is that the more modern Bond films, the older things that you got away with in the 60s don't happen anymore, and I think that it proves, just as society moved on, how much better we've gotten in a world. So I don't think we should touch it. I think we should leave it alone. I don't think that we should remake it. I think if they did, I don't know, would it? I don't know. I don't know. I just don't think it should be remade at all. But yeah, the problems I had with the movie are the problems I had with, I guess, the time period, with what was allowed in the time period.
Well,
I guess.
The one thing I'll say on your storylines have progressed is...
Well, the dubbing.
Yes.
That was the other thing that bothered me.
The one thing I'll say on your storylines have progressed is that Casino Royale rebooted the series. So from that point on, it's a different line.
And I hated Casino Royale.
So Dr. No is not considered part of the line with... Basically, everything Daniel Craig has done is a different line of Bond films from the original, even though it's the same production company, so it's a canonical Bond film.
But, well, I gotta go back on something. I didn't hate Casino Royale. I just thought it could have ended about 25 minutes sooner.
That's probably a fair critique. And
it didn't need to be so long.
We will watch Casino Royale at some point because it is in my top 3 Bond movies. But that's neither here nor there. Now, for my ranking, I am going to give this a 7. I did have some of the same issues, and I've had them for every time I've watched this film that Sarah has pointed out. They are products of their time. That I like. We've moved beyond that, but much like Sarah, I don't think I want to see this movie remade. I like the things it introduced. It is iconic. It gave us the first Bond girl, the way we think of it, with Ursula Andress as Honey Rider. That scene of her coming up out of the water in her bathing suit has been remade twice in Bond films already. Once with Halle Berry in Die Another Day, and then once with Daniel Craig in Casino Royale. It is, we get the martini, the gun, M and Moneypenny. Everything that Bond fans love were introduced in this film, but they were done better in other films. Connery was great in this film. He has better performances as Bond. In fact, I'll tell you right now, his next 2, I think, in From Russia with Love and Goldfinger, are his 2 best performances as Bond. Jack Lord does not return as Felix Lyder. Felix struggles until the Roger Moore era, honestly. The actors who play him in other Connery films cannot live up to what Jack Lord gave us. So there are a lot of great things for this series that are introduced, but they get better later. So I give this a 7 out of 10. It is not my favorite Bond movie by any stretch. It's not my favorite Connery Bond movie by any stretch. It's maybe in my bottom 5 of Bond films to date. If not, it's not far outside of my bottom 5. When I watched Dr. No the first time, I was disappointed. I've grown to appreciate its importance, but I don't rush out to watch Dr. No a lot. But
he makes me watch it.
But if we're going to watch a Bond movie, I wanted to start with the proper Bond movie, and that is Dr. No. So I give it a 7. Sarah gives it a 6.
Would you recommend people watch it, or who would you recommend watch this?
If you want to get into Bond films and you're going to watch them in order, I would recommend watching this. What I would not recommend somebody do is jump in on a better film of the Bond series, watch it, and then go back and watch this.
Like I did.
Yes, because you're probably going to be... Well, you say like you did. It depends on how much better it is. If you watch Goldfinger or The Spy Who Loved Me or Skyfall and then watch this, you're going to be massively disappointed by this. That being said, if you watch... What's one? From Russia with Love, and then come back and watch this. You'll probably find From Russia with Love to be a better movie, but the disparity between the two is not so great that you'll end up being turned off of Bond by this film. You could be turned off of Bond if you watch Goldfinger and then watch this one, or The Spy Who Loved Me, or License to Kill is a criminally underrated Bond movie that I think deserves a lot more love. But I digress on that. I just really love Bond films, as you can tell.
I wouldn't recommend watching this with younger kids. I would recommend to probably at least 12 or 13.
I think I was maybe 9 when I watched it, and that was kind of pushing it when I'm looking back.
Yeah, I would recommend. What is it rated? Do we know?
I don't actually know what it is rated.
Hold on, I'm gonna Google it. Also, just so you know, so the audience knows, we watched it on Pluto TV, which is free with commercials if you have like a streaming stick, or like a Fire Stick or a Roku, or even a smart TV you can get it on. they might not have even had ratings back then. I'm actually Googling right now.
A lot of those...
PG, parental guidance. So I would say probably kids about maybe 10 or 12. I think if you were to watch it with kids right now, I think that you would have to point out that, this is a different time where certain things were allowed to happen back then that aren't allowed to happen anymore, like all the smoking, and things like that, right? But, I think that if you have older kids, you could watch this. If you have older kids who are interested in action films, this would be a good start because it's, again, such an iconic franchise. But I'm no movie expert, so.
Well, that'll wrap it up for this episode of I Watched It With My Wife. Not a bad movie, but not necessarily a great one either. It's kind of a middle of the road.
An important movie.
But it's a very important movie for what it brought into the pop culture lexicon. If you want to follow us on I Watched It With My Wife, we are going to be on several different podcatchers. And through Anchor, they help us distribute our podcasts. So you can go on anchor.fm. You can leave a comment, leave a rating, leave a question that we can play on our next podcast if you so choose. Also, we are on I Watched It With My Wife on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And beyond that, we also have an email address if you would like to email us. It's called withmywifepod@gmail.com. So please feel free, if you have questions, contact us in any of those places.
Or movie suggestions.
We will look at it. We will watch them. We'll watch them. We'll listen to what you have to say. We'll answer your questions on our podcast.
Yeah, and if you disagree with us, we want to know. We don't care, but we want to know.
And we hope to interact with you and learn why you disagree with us or why you agree with us. All right, so that is it for this episode. Next episode, I believe I've decided we are watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe film Captain America: The First Avenger. It's a period piece set during World War II, so that should be very interesting.
I may have seen that. I know I've seen one of the Captain Americas.
We tried to watch that at the drive-in theater, and you fell asleep. All right.
Okay, so there I am with movies. Okay, so I have to stay awake.
Yes, you have to stay awake. So we'll be back in another episode. Bye.
Have a good week.